4, verses 4 through 26. Listen for the word of the Lord. Now, Jesus had to go through Samaria, so he came to a town in Samaria called Sychar, near the plot of ground Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired as he was from the journey, sat down by the well. It was about the 6th hour. When a Samaritan woman came to draw water, Jesus said to her, "Will you give me a drink?" His disciples had gone into the town to buy food. The Samaritan woman said to him, "You are a Jew and I am a Samaritan. How can you ask me for a drink?" For Jews do not associate with Samaritans. Jesus answered her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that asks you for a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." "Sir," the woman said, "you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where can you get this living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us the well and drank from it himself, as did also his sons and his flocks and herds?" Jesus answered, "Everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again, but whoever drinks the water I give him will never thirst. Indeed, the water I give him will become in him a spring of water welling up to eternal life." The woman said to him, "Sir, give me this water so that I won't get thirsty and have to keep coming here to draw water." He told her, "Go, call your husband and come back." "I have no husband," she replied. Jesus said to her, "You are right when you say you have no husband. The fact is, you have had 5 husbands, and the man you now have is not your husband. What you have just said is quite true." "Sir," the woman said, "I can see that you are a prophet. Our fathers worshipped on this mountain, but you Jews claim that the place that we must worship is in Jerusalem." Jesus declared, "Believe me, woman, a time is coming when you will worship the Father neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem. You Samaritans worship what you do not know. We worship what we do know, for salvation is from the Jews. Yet a time is coming and has now come when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth, for they are the kind of worshipers the Father seeks. God is spirit, and his worshipers must worship in spirit and in truth." The woman said, "I know that the Messiah called Christ is coming. When he comes, he will explain everything to us." Jesus declared, "I who speak to you am he." This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Well, everyone, happy Maywin Sukkot Day. For that is the true name of St. Patrick, the people call St. Patrick. He was born in Scotland, late 300s A.D. His family was Roman-British. His father was a soldier in the Roman army. The Romans were still in Great Britain at the time. At 16 years old, he was abducted by Irish pirates and sold into slavery in Ireland. He was forced to work as a shepherd, and he experienced cold and hunger, and he prayed a lot. He spent 6 years as a slave in Ireland, praying to the Lord, and finally the Lord answered his prayer. God came to him in a vision and said, "It's time to go home." And so Maywin Sukkot left his bondage and walked 200 miles to the coast of Ireland. He talked his way onto a merchant ship as a hired hand on the merchant ship, worked his way across the sea, and walked home, back to Scotland. Once he got home, he told his parents that he was going to become a priest. And so he entered the priesthood, and the local bishop sent him to France, where he got an education and training and all that good stuff. And when he was about 40 years old, he told the Bishop of Great Britain, "God wants me to go back to Ireland and preach the word." At the time, there was a Christian mission in Ireland. However, it was not very successful. Mostly the Christian mission in Ireland was with immigrants, English immigrants that had moved, that had either been forced to go to Ireland or had chosen to move to Ireland. But the Irish people were not saying yes to Jesus. So about 420 AD, Patrick, this priest crosses back over into Ireland where he was a slave, and the first person he goes to is a chieftain named Milku, and that was his owner. And he went right to his owner, his past owner, and converted the man. He could have been arrested, he could have been executed, he could have been made a slave again. But he went to the one person he knew in Ireland and converted him. And that started a 30-year career in Ireland, converting the entire island. He was successful in 30 years. He converted everybody, almost everyone, not quite everyone, almost everybody on the island of Ireland. Amazing. And he did it in two ways. He did it because he knew the culture. He understood how Irish culture worked. He spent 6 years there. He learned the language, he learned the culture, and he spent 20 years thinking about it. Thinking and preparing. How do I reach these people in this culture? And so he took advantage. He took advantage of what he knew about the culture. He knew that the first people to speak to reach out to, were the chieftains, the tribal leaders. Because if he could convert them, then they would bring their tribe along with them. He knew about, he also incorporated Irish culture into Christianity. For example, the Irish liked bonfires at religious holidays. So guess what? They like bonfires at Easter in Ireland, big bonfires. The Celtic cross that I'm not wearing today. A Celtic cross has a circle in it. It's a cross with a circle. The circle is a symbol for the sun. Patrick added the circle to the cross because they were already worshiping these circles that were the sun. So he added that to say, God, we're to worship God, and God is Jesus in the cross. Shamrock, three petals on a shamrock, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, the Trinity. So he took things that people were familiar with, and cultural things, and he used them to promote Jesus Christ, a belief in Jesus Christ. But he also took people. He ministered to people. He ministered within the culture, but he ministered to individuals. For example, the first person he reached out to was his former owner, and was able to convert him. So let's take a look at today's story, the story of Jesus and the Samaritan woman. And let's see what Jesus does. Because Jesus comes into this village, speaks to a woman, and by the end of this story, which continues through the rest of the chapter, they have converted the entire village. And the entire village believes in Jesus. So how did he do it? How did Jesus do it? So let's take a look. So, the culture of the time period. As part of the culture of the time period, that Jews and Samaritans don't talk to each other. Samaritans were part of the northern kingdom that broke away from the southern kingdom, of David's kingdom. The Samaritans were invaded by Assyrians. Lots of Syrian people moved into Samaria, so they were a mixed group. Whereas down by Jerusalem, the people who moved back from Persia, from the Persian, the forced exodus of Persia, they married only their own people. They stayed Judean, let's say. They didn't mix with other people outside of their group. So therefore the Samaritans are sort of, they're relatives, but they're the black sheep of the family. They mix with other people. Ooh, bad, evil. So we don't mix, we don't talk to them, we don't do, if we have to travel through Samaria, a good Judean just buys what he or she needs and doesn't talk to anybody. Just keeps going through Samaria. And the woman at the well knows that Jesus is a Judean by the way he dresses, knows by the way he speaks. Just like people today. We know, as soon as you meet somebody, we kind of get an idea of where they're from, of what kind of person they are. It's one of those things that we pick up the cues. I've always wondered, how do people in the Balkans know that this person's a Serbian and that person is from somewhere? How do they know? They all look the same, they all dress the same, they all talk the same. People know, we know. When you're different, we know. So, first thing, Jesus asks her for water, and she says, "How is it that you ask me for water?" Because it's just not done. And also, another cultural prohibition is, a man does not speak to a woman that the man does not know without other people around. Just not done. So she's, once right off the bat, she's like, "What? You're speaking to me?" And then Jesus immediately starts talking about God. Immediately starts talking. Jesus is immediately into mission mode. And what he does is he uses the water of the well as a way to connect with her about God. To talk about God. He says, if you knew who I am, you would ask for living water that will extend into eternal life. And of course, she's confused by that. She doesn't really understand what he means by that. What? Living water? What is this living water? I don't understand what this living water is. And he says, everyone who drinks will never be thirsty again. And so she continues to be confused by what he's saying. It's like, well, give me this water so I don't have to come here to this dumb well anymore and draw from it. And then he changes the conversation. He changes the conversation really dramatically. And this is where we see he's dealing with culture at first, but now he deals with the person, the individual. Because he knows this woman, he knows all of us, he knows everyone. And he says, call your husband. And she says, well, I don't have a husband. And he says, yeah, you've had 5 husbands. Now if we look in, if we were to do some research in the what's called the Talmud, which is Jewish writings about the law of Moses, we would find you're allowed three spouses. I didn't know that. You have 3 spouses, really? I thought, that they kind of discouraged divorce, but maybe it's if your three spouses die or 2 spouses die, you can remarry. I'm not sure exactly how that works. But after the 3rd spouse, you're out of luck. So she's a sinner. 5 spouses. She's a pretty serious sinner, and she's living with a man she's not married to. She's a serious sinner. All right, we don't like this. But he does it to shock her. It's really more of a shock therapy kind of thing. He just kind of shocks her into trying to pay attention to what he's talking about, because he's talking about God and spiritual things, and she's hung up on water, on the well. And so then he said, and so she says, well, I can see you're a prophet. I mean, you know all about me, so you must be a prophet. And so he said, and so she then goes back to another cultural thing. And that is the mountain, Gerizim, which is right there in Samaria. And when the people returned from the Sinai, they used to bring the ark around different places, set up worship spaces, and sort of share the ark of the covenant from place to place. And so there's a worship space up on Mount Gerizim. And that worship space was used even after the ark left and went to Jerusalem. People continued to worship up on Mount Gerizim. But then a time came when Jerusalem, the authorities of Jerusalem decided, oh, we can't have these separate worship spaces. So we're going to get rid of all the worship spaces. Everybody comes to Jerusalem. So that's what she's talking about when she says, we used to work, my ancestors used to worship on this place. And so Jesus takes culture to worship. Where do you worship? Jerusalem, Gerizim, here, there, who knows? Jesus takes worship and says, God is calling for people to worship God in spirit and in truth. Spirit and in truth, which is here. Not over there, not over there, not necessarily here in this nice space we have to worship in. Worship inside of us. Worship in our hearts. To truly worship God in our hearts. So that's what Jesus starts to talk about. And then she changes once again, the discussion once again, and mentions the Messiah. Everybody's waiting for King David to come again. Everyone's waiting for a prophet to rise up like Elijah and change the world. And Jesus says, I am that person. I am that person. Wow. So, as you can see, Jesus uses the same techniques that St. Patrick used, and that is culture, working with culture, and then working with the person, working with the individual. And then, of course, this is how modern evangelists work. This is how we work. This is what Sam is being taught by the Southern Baptists, and I have been taught. We got to pay attention to culture, because you can't pretend culture doesn't matter. The world doesn't count. It does. It's powerful. Culture is incredibly powerful. But at the same time, we're here to minister to people, individuals, each individual separately. Jesus took individuals seriously. Jesus would stop what he was doing, whatever he was doing, and minister to the person right in front of him. The example is that the man who climbed through the ceiling to seek being healed. Most people would be offended by that. Like, hey, you're interrupting. I'm speaking here, and you're interrupting me. Jesus ministers to each individual, but he takes the culture seriously. Paul does the same thing. The entire book of Romans is addressing culture. The culture of the time, the culture of Gentile culture on this side, and Jewish culture on this side. And how do these two cultures come together in Jesus Christ and make a church that praises and worships God and believes in Jesus Christ? That's the whole book of Romans, is dealing with how do you bring clashing cultures together under Jesus Christ, the head of the church. So he deals with culture, but he deals with individuals too. He ministers to individuals. Peter, the vision that Peter had of the animals that come down from heaven, and and God tells him, okay, Peter, eat of these animals. And Peter says, but the law of Moses tells me I can't eat of these animals. It probably had lobster on that plate. I would have dug into the lobster, It's like, oh, law of Moses? Forget the law of Moses. I like lobster. But Peter's vision comes down, and God says, eat. And Peter says, no, I can't. The law of Moses says. And God says, whatever I say is clean, is clean. And then Peter realizes that this vision is telling him that the Gentile mission is God's mission. And that culture shouldn't stop him. This Jewish Gentile culture thing should not stop him from ministering to individuals in that. So that's also a culture clash in that story, the Peter story. So let's look at our mission here at First Baptist Church of Broadway. We're still here. We're still doing mission. We're still doing ministry, and a lot of the reason we're still here is because of the immigrant ministry we embraced 16, 17 years ago. Because we said yes. The wonderful people who have been part of this church said yes to Indian mission and to Latino mission and all the other crazy ministry ideas we've tried over the years. And that's working with the culture. That's working with the culture, the world that God has placed us in. New Jersey is multicultural. We got immigrants from everywhere. We got people from everywhere. And so God challenges us to work with everybody. It's not a monoculture. It would be so much easier if it was. It'd be so much easier if we were, all we had to do was reach out to people who were just like me. If that was my job, to reach out to people who were just like me, who think like me and talk like me and dress like me, which is, that would be so much easier. But the Lord said, no, First Baptist minister to people who are different, who have come here from all over the world. And so we said yes. And that's why we're still here, doing ministry. But God challenges us even more, because we need to reach people in different ways, not just one way. We have to reach out in different ways. Our culture is so complicated. Children's ministry, where we have Awana in this church, and so we're working. That's a children's ministry, and we're trying. The Latinos and the Telugus are trying to reach people with the Awana children's ministries. Pedro does holidays, which is what I'm starting to think in terms of working with holidays. That's something they haven't talked to you already about the holiday thing. That's a big thing in the Southern Baptist training. Holidays, work with holidays. Take advantage of the holidays. Mother's Day, Father's Day, Memorial Day, this day, that day, anniversaries, all this kind of holiday thing. Take advantage of the holidays. Work with the holidays. Take the holidays and talk about, take the opportunity of a holiday and talk about Jesus. Use it to talk about Jesus. Some churches do Super Bowl Sunday in their churches. Watch the Super Bowl and talk about Jesus. It's a stretch, but some churches do that, and of course they're not allowed to use the word Super Bowl. Okay, social media. Now we're being challenged by Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all these things that I barely understand, barely. And this is yet another challenge. There's a church in Bridgewater that I'm familiar with, or it's a Baptist church, that is using a website where every Sunday, he says, pull out your cell phones. Mine is over there somewhere. Pull out your cell phones. And everybody pulls out their cell phones. And he says, okay, click on this link on the church website, and it's a mission link. It's for mission, and it's to advertise a mission that the church supports. It's not the church so much, and it's not the church's website, but it's a mission that the church is tied into. And so they click on that link, and once again, I don't quite understand it. But what it does is everybody's Facebook friends gets a picture, a picture link, whatever it is, on their feed. Am I using the right language? I am using the right language, right? It's a feed. You don't know? You come on, you're not into this stuff? Please. I need help, I need help, and these guys who are supposed to be helping me, teenagers, it's a feed, right? Oh, thank you. Okay, so everybody, all the friends on everybody in the church, they get a post on their feed that has the church and the mission that the church supports with a little bit, with a blurb about the mission and how, you should be helping in this mission, and so the church gets advertising on social media, and the mission that they support gets advertising on social media, and it goes to hundreds, probably thousands of people every single Sunday. Every single Sunday. And then the pastor says, okay, now turn your phone off while we worship. So that we're not getting all that during the worship service. We don't want that. We don't want that. My phone has an owl that calls. When somebody calls my phone, I have an owl call. We don't want to hear that during worship, so I turn it off every Sunday. I don't want you to hear the owl call. Anyway, so that's working with culture. That's a great, I love that idea, because that is really working with culture there. But at the same time, we've seen from the story of Patrick and the story of Jesus and the Samaritan woman, not only do we have to engage culture, we have to minister to people. Each individual is important. Everybody matters. Patrick went back and Patrick ministered to one person at a time. Jesus ministered to one person at a time. We're always looking for shortcuts, We're always looking like this whole social media thing that the Bridgewater Church does. That's a great idea. They reach out to thousands of people every single Sunday through this social media idea, and that's really a great idea. But they still have to minister to every person. So if somebody gets this message on their phone and they say, I think I'm going to check out this church on Sunday, they have to identify, find that person in their church and talk to that person and minister to that person. Because in the end, that's what it's all about. Each of us ministering to people, bringing the good news of Jesus Christ to each individual in their own unique individual way, in the way that they can understand. So our challenge and our prayer that we must be praying for is that God can help us to take advantage of what the culture gives us, to figure out how to use what this crazy American culture that we all exist in, and use that to spread the good news of Jesus Christ, to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ, the good news that God has given to us, while at the same time ministering to every individual that God has placed in our hands. We have been given the tools. God has given us the tools. The Scriptures is a tool, and God has given us gifts and strengths and all that. And we've been given the outline, the plan. And the plan is this story about Jesus and the Samaritan woman. That's the plan. And Christians have been following this plan. Culture, individual, have been following the plan that this very same way that Jesus evangelized. Christians have been doing this for 2,000 years. And that's why I wanted to lift up Maewyn Sukkot or St. Patrick, because he did exactly the same thing Jesus did, and followed in Jesus' footsteps. And look at how successful he was 30 years he converted an island. That's pretty good. Not bad.